Wisdom in Your Life has been working in the area of cultural psychology, people and culture for over 25 years. We educate people to develop their cultural intelligence. We measure the unseen dynamics that are driving performance. And we take organisations through a process of transforming their culture by helping them to build their own internal cultural capability to maintain proactive, healthy workplace cultures. Now, this all sounds great, but what does it actually mean? So to start with, we're going to take a closer look at culture and how it works. As more people become focused on culture and its impact, both good and bad, more and more people are asking, what is culture? However, a better question is to ask, how does it work? So I'm going to give you a few learning points to start with so that you can better understand culture and avoid some of the fundamental errors many people make. Culture influences every aspect of the workplace. Decision making, the development of processes and policies, how teams function, individual performance and individual mental health. Addressing culture directly is the most cost and time effective point of leverage when it comes to driving meaningful and lasting change. Yet culture is fundamentally misunderstood. So let's start with some of the basic questions. Let's start with understanding, where is culture? So let's start in an organisational setting. We have the organisation, which is created around a purpose. Individual employees come into the organisation. They are then organised into teams, and this is where work gets done. So the next question is where is culture in this diagram? It's here, in the space that surrounds everyone, all of the individual employees and all of the teams. It's where all the interactions take place. It's in the space in between. This means that individuals are surrounded by many cultures all at the same time. We have the culture of the whole organisation, but we also have the culture within the team. We also have the culture of many of the informal groups that may form within the organisation. And it doesn't just stop there. We also have the culture of an individual's family and the community and the wider culture that they're a part of. Now, while the organisation and the team and the individual employees are all dependent upon one another for the whole thing to work, the scale of influence between the three is not the same. The organisation has the greatest capacity to influence the mindset and behaviour and attitudes of all within it, followed by the team, followed by the individual employee. When it comes to addressing issues in the culture, locating the source of influence is critical. The next thing to understand is that the aspects of culture that can be seen and observed, like actions, decisions, and what is said, only represent 10% of what is actually occurring. The 10% is connected and driven by the unseen 90%, which is widely ignored, yet is experienced by all. The unseen 90% of culture contains all that we feel but struggle and fail to articulate. It contains the history and the story and all of the responses to all of the management decisions that have occurred over a lifespan. Now, because the unseen 90% generally remains ignored and unaddressed, over time, ingrained destructive patterns can form that drive the 10% we observe. These patterns need to be transformed into creative growth patterns. This is how we generate a strong culture that continues to drive performance and that people want to be part of. Both destructive and creative growth patterns occur and are experienced at an organisational level, a team level, and an individual employee level. Now, remember our earlier learning point about the different scales of influence. This is how the different patterns can spread throughout an organisation within its culture. Most leaders, managers, and employees are completely unaware of the influence of the unseen 90% and how culture works. People mistakenly respond by focusing on the 10% actions, words, and decisions of other individuals, as they are unable to discern the actual sources that are influencing them. To help you to understand this better, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Firstly, how often is it that when the culture of an organisation or a team is not where it needs to be, the first response is to replace the CEO or the team manager, when really this is not addressing the actual patterns that are stuck within the culture that are influencing all that can be observed? Next, how often is it in similar situations that we send large swathes of individual employees on behavioural training related to culture, when, as we can see, the biggest point of leverage is addressing the dynamics and the patterns that are stuck within the organisational culture or the team culture, rather than focusing just on the individual, which has the least capacity to influence the culture in this situation. And now we can begin to appreciate how culture impacts the mental well-being of many of the individual employees within an organisation. We can also begin to appreciate that employee assistance programs alone are not the full answer, as at best they can stabilise an individual, but the individual will still have to return back to the destructive culture which has caused the issues in the first place. Again, we need to look wider at the team and organisational culture and the dynamics and patterns that are at play within that. Now that you understand how culture works, let's look at the next steps you can take and the services that Wisdom in Your Life provide to help you on your journey. The first step is to acknowledge and normalise. It is important to acknowledge that culture exists, where it is, how it works, its role and its capacity to influence. Then it is important to normalise this amongst those around you, to build a shared understanding so that you're not alone. We provide a simple 1 to 1.5 hour Developing Your CQ, your Cultural Intelligence workshop, where we expand on many of the points in this video with activities to facilitate a deeper shared understanding of culture. This is an ideal start for leaders, managers and team leaders, as well as individual employees who want to address cultural issues within their workplace. The next step is to measure and locate the source and scale of the patterns in place within the organisation, its teams and among its individual employees. Our Organisational Cultural Integrity Audit provides a simple dynamic picture of what is occurring within the unseen 90% at all levels of the organisation. Simplicity and visual elements are the key to high response rates. Our audit is built on 24 simple, intuitive pictures, and it takes less than 4 minutes to complete. The audit is accessible via a link or a QR code on a PC, laptop, tablet or mobile. Time and again, we've been told that results from our audit are able to consciously articulate what most leaders, managers and employees know what is occurring within an organisation, deep down within them, but they're struggling to articulate. Understanding the results and seeing the interplay between the real root causes of why culture is as it is can be quite a profound experience, which is what makes it so unique to anything else on the market. The next two steps are learning to discern between the different sources of influence that surround us, and then transforming the patterns, transforming destructive patterns into creative life growth patterns. Now, this is completed individually and then collectively. The reason for this is to first build our individual capability and then create an internal organisational capability that is able to proactively maintain a healthy workplace culture. This is a key focus of our work at Wisdom in Your Life. Skilling and equipping our clients to have their own capability to manage their own culture so that they are not dependent upon us to help them in the future. So the first step is to take a collection of employees through a process to develop their own individual discernment so that they can differentiate between their own internal unseen patterns and the company patterns that surround them. The next step is then to teach them a further process of transforming patterns internally. This means transforming their own destructive patterns into creative growth patterns. In this way, employees are able to discern what is theirs, what is not theirs, and transform patterns internally that are not serving them. The focus now moves to building the internal organisational capability. Employees collectively apply their capability to surface and transform destructive patterns rooted in the organisation and team cultures that are impacting operations and performance of the business and all within it. The final step is to integrate the internal cultural capability into the organisation to ensure there is a continuation of focus. This is how an internal capability is built to cultivate and proactively maintain a healthy organisational culture, and in the process transform destructive patterns that were previously impacting the operations performance and the general well-being and resilience of the organisation, its teams and its employees. Hopefully, even by watching this video, you will now begin to understand culture better for yourself. If you would like to ask any questions, if anything's come up that you'd like to talk about in this video, if you're curious about our services, if you're interested in building your own internal capability to manage the culture of your workplace, then please, by all means, get in touch by the email link below, and we'll be more than happy to start having a conversation about how you can build a better culture in your workplace.